I'm J. Brent Eaton with PowerLoveAndMiracles.com, and thank you for joining me for part one of What is the Soul. In this series, we'll be looking at how God designed the human soul and how knowing that can change your life. If you'd like more information about this class, go to PowerLoveAndMiracles.com, click on classes to find out more about this one, but also other things that we have to offer. I would like for you too to subscribe to this channel, and that way you can be notified when we have a new class coming online. The focal passage for this lesson comes from Romans chapter 8, verses 26 and 27. The Spirit also helps our weaknesses, for we don't know how to pray as we ought. But the Spirit himself makes intercession for us with groanings which can't be uttered. He who searches the heart knows what's on the Spirit's mind, because he makes intercession for the saints according to God. In this passage, Paul is saying to us that there are times when we have this very strong urge to say something to God, but we just can't put the words to it. The good news is the Spirit understands us better than we know ourselves. And those hidden depths of who we are fully known to God. And those hidden depths are part of our soul, and understanding how those parts operate can help us to live a more fulfilled life. Defining the soul is kind of hard to explain. In fact, I would say if you ask 10 people to define the soul, you'll probably get about 12 answers. It's been that way throughout human history as theologians and philosophers have attempted to define what the soul is. One of the opinions is that the soul is the mind and dies with the body. When you're alive, you're great. When you're dead, you're gone. Doesn't make any difference anyway, and kind of a fatalistic approach, and definitely not what Christian theology teaches. The next one is the soul is the mind. It is eternal, but separate from the body. There have been opinions throughout Christian history that say that your spirit is separate completely from your body. Your spirit is good, body's evil. Keep them apart from each other, and life is good. But it doesn't work that way. The next idea is that the soul, mind, and body are united, getting closer to what we'll be talking about, but not exactly there. And then there's a quote by C.S. Lewis that I love. It says, "You are a soul. You have a body." This is getting closer to what we will be talking about, because C.S. Lewis says that your body is part of your human soul, and I agree. Brent's definition of what the soul is: it's a gift from God. It's multidimensional but inseparable. It's impossible to describe intellectually. It always speaks to God and to us. It's never quiet. And your soul can be cultivated, it can be ignored, but never destroyed. Your soul is going to tell you what you need to know the easy way or the hard way, and you can't get rid of the message. We're going to define those characteristics a little more deeply, but I want to start with a passage from Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. It says, "Yahweh God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." In Jewish theology, they believe that there were different parts and dimensions to the human soul, and all of those are mentioned in this passage, and we'll be looking at those as we go along. I believe that the soul is a gift from God. God used an intricate and intentional design for the human soul. We're not put together by accident. Everything that we have and that we do is intentional. And the soul is eternal only because of God's design. It's not an innate trait. You are not eternal just because you have a breath right now. It is a gift from God. God's given us that as his ultimate gift. And it has potentialities that we miss or misuse. There's a lot of depths to our soul that we don't understand, and we may not know why we act the way we do or why things happen repeatedly, but it's all part of the human soul. And the example I have from this is that God will get our attention in any number of ways, through any number of methods. God's always speaking to us through this soul that he's given us. The next characteristic is it's multidimensional but inseparable. Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 describes 5 different dimensions of the human soul. These dimensions interrelate like instruments in a symphony. All of them have to be included, and all of them have to be utilized in an appropriate manner for us to be in harmony. All 5 of these dimensions impact life whether we desire it or not. The message of the soul is going to come out one way or the other. We have some level of control over how these dimensions operate. There's some that we have more than others, but we can't control everything because there's so much to us that's just not there. It's not available to us. And as a grief counselor, one of the things that I hear a lot when a person's accepting a tragedy is they say, my heart My head accepts what happened, but my heart hasn't caught up yet. And that's a great way of describing there are different dimensions and parts of us that don't always work in sync. The next is, it's impossible to describe intellectually. In Romans 8, 26, 27, as we read, we don't know how to pray as we ought. We can't come up with the words all the time. How then, if we can't come up with the words to explain how we feel, how could we possibly describe everything that's there? And in fact, our words are limited. And I've heard so many times people who've been through a really wonderful experience, and they say, it's hard to describe. You just had to have been there. You can't describe it because it's not available to you in words. Our soul always speaks to God and to us. Each of these dimensions has a different language that is never silent. It's always doing what it was designed to do and always speaking how it was designed to speak. One thing you need to consider too is that you are praying 24/7, 365. Note to self, be careful what I pray for, because at what point are you not praying? If God is a part of you and is living within you, then God's always in communication with those parts of ourselves that are never silent. So you literally are always praying. When we experience soul speak through feelings, intuitions, random thoughts, and prayer, those are parts of our soul that are trying to speak to us with the message and the language that they have to offer. And the best example I have of this is, and you probably felt this as well, I just had this gut feeling that there was more to the story. You know there's something else there. You can't put words to it, but you know. And that's describing some of the hidden dimensions of the soul. The next is, it can be cultivated, ignored, but never destroyed. God gives us the ability to grow and strengthen our soul. And when we do that, God can offer to us and help us to understand more of the unknown factors that go on in our lives, but we have to intentionally focus on that. But ignoring the languages of the soul leads to heartbreak and disappointment. The majority of difficulties that we go through in life are because we don't understand what our soul is trying to tell us and how to follow that leading. And our soul continues to exist and thrive after our physical body stops working. And this is what we call in Christian ministry discipleship and spiritual growth. We're always improving and refining and defining and learning more about our soul as we grow closer and closer to God for that day that we'll all be together in heaven. Now, I believe that there is a map of the human soul that can help us to understand how these dimensions work a little bit more effectively. This outline that's designed here is a visual representation of the map of the human soul. There are 5 different dimensions of it, and we'll be describing each of these briefly here and going into detail as we go along. The different dimensions start off with, on the bottom, the red ring, the energetic dimension of the soul. This is your physical body and the transmission of energy. You are an energetic being. In fact, even the molecules and atoms in your body are composed of energy. So you are an energetic being. And your nervous system, the chemicals within your body, the movements that you make are always transmitting energy. That's the first one. The second one, the orange ring, is the responsive level. This is your emotional soul. Your emotional soul responds and reacts to the stimuli, the sensations that you receive from your body. The yellow, the middle one, is the integrative soul, and this communicates intrapersonally, meaning within you, and interpersonally with other people to keep your soul in harmony. In fact, if you'll notice, the yellow ring touches all other 4, so they're all united together in that one that helps keep everything in stasis. The next one is the psychogenic level. This is the activity of what we commonly call the mind, and we'll be going into detail about what the mind really is. And then the blue ring, the supernal, is beyond the self. It's not part of your human dimension. In fact, it's not part of the material dimension at all. This is in total communion with God and how God relates to us. Now, in the next lesson, we'll be looking specifically at the energetic soul and how that influences who you are as a person. But that'll be for next lesson. Some things I want you to ponder between now and the time you see the next lesson are these. 1, how much of my life is on autopilot? Because there are a lot of things that we don't understand about ourselves, not conscious of, but there are lots of things we do every day that happen automatically. One example I'll give you is if you've driven somewhere that you go to all the time, you get there and you think, I don't remember how I got here. Well, that's because you were on autopilot. So what are some other things about your life that are on autopilot? When was the last time I changed a major belief? Changing beliefs is difficult and it takes some effort. But when's the last time you changed a major belief and what was it? How difficult was changing that belief? If it was in the middle of a crisis, you experienced pain and difficulty on your way to understanding that new belief. And how does my attitude change throughout the day and why? These are the things we'll consider in the next lesson. But between now and then, I would like for you to review these things to ponder and start investigating and taking a look at the things that you do every day that you do without even having to think about it. So between now and then, thank you for joining me. We'll be back with another lesson here real soon. And thank you for being here for Power, Love, and Miracles, Part 1 of What is the Soul?